Part 1. This tutorial will familiarize you with the default settings of the MS-20 Mini. Although the MS-20 Mini is a synthesizer with unique patching options, using its internal patch alone will enable you to create some really great sounds. In order to set the MS-20 Mini to its default state, first we'll unplug all of the patch cables. When all of the patch cables are unplugged, these 6 knobs control modulation depths. We'll want to set all of these knobs to 0. Without the patch, Envelope Generator 2 is automatically routed to the amp. This means that Envelope Generator 2 can be used to produce changes in volume over a selected duration. Additional details for Envelope Generator 2 will be covered in Part 2. First, let's set the attack time to 0. When the attack time is set to 0, any keystroke will instantly generate sound. Next, let's set the decay time to 0 as well. We'll set the sustain level to 10. Then we're going to set the release time to 0. This specifies the time it takes the sound to fade out after a key has been released. Now, let's move along to hold time. This parameter determines the time that the oscillator will be held open, even without your hands on the keys. We're going to set this to 0 as well. The basic setting for the envelope generator is known as organ type. Next, let's adjust the portamento knob. Portamento determines the amount of time it takes for one note to glide in pitch to the next note played. We're going to set this to 0. The MS-20 Mini provides 2 voltage-controlled oscillators, or VCOs for short. These are the sound generators. The VCO mixer controls the volumes for the 2 oscillators. The top knob controls VCO 1 level, which is the volume for the first oscillator, on the left. It's easiest to listen to one oscillator at a time when creating sounds, so raise the VCO 1 level and cut the VCO 2 level all the way. Next, we will select the VCO wave shape with the top knob. Then let's select the saw wave as the default. The third knob will enable you to switch between octaves. This setting only has the VCO 1 level from the VCO mixer, so at this point, VCO 2 will not be heard. Now, let's raise the volume of VCO 2. Now, let's select the wave shape of VCO 2 with the top knob, just like we did with VCO 1. Select the saw wave, just as we did for VCO 1, and set it to the same octave as the default setting. Sound that passed through the VCO mixer will now pass through the filter section. The high-pass filter filters sounds from the low frequencies upward. This filter not only cuts, but it can also emphasize the frequency range pre-selected by raising the peak knob for the cutoff frequency. Since this filters sounds from the low frequencies upward, the default uncut condition can be achieved by setting the cutoff frequency and peak to 0. This is the default setting. Sound that's passed through the high-pass filter will now pass through the low-pass filter. The low-pass filter is the opposite of the high-pass filter. It filters sounds from the high frequencies downward. The sound will be muffled, like this. This not only cuts, but it can also emphasize pre-selected frequencies by raising resonance with the peak knob, producing distinctive synthesizer sounds. Since this filter cuts from the high frequencies downward, the default uncut condition can be achieved by setting the cutoff frequency to 10 and setting the peak to 0. This is the default setting. With no patch cables and the modulation depth set to 0, settings for envelope generator 1 and the modulation generator will have no effect. These are the normal settings for the MS-20 Mini. For more information, check out Korg.com.